That was a nice move by Pipkins, taking it right to the rack himself. Wide open three, left wing, and it's good. Nylon, the dunk likes that, Matt.
A three from the right side, and it's good! The one, Pipkins, the man, yet again.
Hello and welcome to The Flex. I'm Matt St. Jean.
And coming to you live from Providence, Rhode Island, this is Joe Howie.
And this is our last regular season post-game show, and it's a good one. Friars knock off Villanova 54-52. I mean, there's a lot to unpack in this game, but Joe, you got to watch this one at Providence. How's it feel watching it there for this game?
Well, I'll tell you, my heart is not feeling great right now just because, man, the Friars are so good at giving me a heart attack. So good at it. But, wow. So for context, my a couple of my housemates and I decided that we would have a little reunion in Providence for the game. So we went to this bar called Old's Irish Social Club. Everything was socially distanced, so tables are spread out. I think it was actually 12 feet. They did a really good job spreading everyone out, but in the final minute and a half, you wouldn't have thought that bar was socially distant with the noise. I mean, Providence fans can bring it. 12 feet apart or not, it was loud in there, and you could probably tell by my voice right now. I was screaming at the end of the game. David Duke / Nate Watson. I mean, that tip in should go to both of them, but I lost my voice screaming for that. Listen, as up and down as of a season that we've had, beating Villanova always feels nice. As a Friar fan, it always feels nice to beat Villanova.
Yep. And I mean, this game right here, I think, was a microcosm of the season in so many different ways. And for a lot, I thought we were just going to be copying and pasting the last post-game episode here. But I mean, the Friars, you build that lead in the first half, go up by 20 points, 38-18. You hold Villanova to just 21 points in the first half, which is a pattern we've seen. Friars held them to 21 in the first half in this game, held them to 24 in the first half earlier this season, held them to 18 in the first half at Wells Fargo Center last year. So that's the last three games. Ed Cooley's defenses come out hot against Villanova. Second half, though, a little bit of a different story. 31 points for Villanova. The Friars offense managing just 16, and Villanova comes back to tie the game. And then in the truest fashion of this season, it's Watson and Duke coming together to tip in an offensive rebound to put the Friars ahead late. Watson and Duke each with 20 points. That's what we've seen all season long right there. It's the two of them getting it done, leading the Friars to victory.
Matt, I think you bring up a great point. This entire game is a microcosm of the entire season. Duke and Watson shine. Duke doesn't shoot great from the field, but still puts up significant double figures. Watson imposes his will down low. And then you have a sneaky double-double from Noah Horchler, while Reeves actually, I thought he had a pretty good game. He didn't score the ball very well, which we've seen. He's streaky, but he had a good game. And then he had great contributions from Gant and Bynum. It's the entire season wrapped up into one, except we won instead of lost.
Exactly. And the Friars finished the season above 500 at 13-12, 9-10 in Big East play, but they do finish above 500. They will be the 7 seed in the Big East tournament. So we'll have more on the Big East tournament later. Will be Big East action later tonight, and we'll see what happens in those games to find out who the Friars will be playing. But I mean, you look at the stats, Watson, 20 points, 4 rebounds, 2 blocks. Duke, 20 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, getting it done. Noah Horchler, he fouled out, but he had a double-double early in the second half. 10 points. He hit the lone three-pointer for the Friars in the second period, and he had 13 rebounds. I mean, he was a force on the boards, and Villanova did not have an answer for him there.
Matt, I said this in the pregame show. Jay Wright did not have an answer for Noah Horchler. I get it. He fouled out. He did get killed with a couple of nickel dimer fouls. There was some very light contact on Jermaine Samuels. I think in the first half, he picked up 2 quick back-to-back fouls, both on Samuels, and that was really the dagger for him with respect to foul trouble. But Jay Wright did not plan properly for Noah Horchler, as indicated by his double-double. Nate Watson, I really want to drive that point home. He lives rent free. Like, he will live in Caleb Daniels' head for the rest of that man's life.
Oh my goodness, that dunk!
If you, both dunks. If you look up the definition of visual frustration in the dictionary, Caleb Daniels, after Nate Watson slammed it on his head, that picture will be in the dictionary next to the definition of visual frustration. I mean, you got to give him credit because Daniels had a really tough shooting night. He still put up some good figures, but Watson owned him in the paint. That was Watson recognized the mismatch, and his players, Duke specifically, recognized the mismatch. They fed him, and he really emphasized awesome basketball.
Yeah, and Jay Wright did not have an answer for Nate Watson either. Again, 20 points, 8 of 13 from the field. And I mean, if they could get the pass to him, Watson was a sure bucket most of the time. And that's, I mean, due to Villanova's size. I mentioned it at the halftime break, our halftime show. But Villanova's lineup, while big, it's big in the middle. They play big wings and big forwards. They don't have a true center. We've talked about this. So whether it be Samuels or Robinson Earl, or, I mean, Swider is 6'9", but you're not going to see him defending anybody down low that often. Whichever one of these guys ends up on Watson, it is a mismatch. The only way that they can defend him is to try to double team or even triple team. And that's where the Friars offense started to struggle in the second half. But also, that's where David Duke shined and Noah Horkler shined. They were able to pull from the extra attention that Watson drew.
Yeah, Matt, I think you bring up a great point. Their size in the middle of the lineup, specifically the 2 to 3, they own the advantage there. But as I've said all season, Jeremiah Robinson Earl plays out of position. He's not a center. And realistically, he's probably going to go to the NBA. He's going to be a stretch 3-4. He's not a center. They play him as the center. But you're right. We took advantage of where they had their hole. That's what we did with Creighton. That's basically what we've done when teams try to play small ball against us. Again, sorry for my voice. I lost it screaming. But when teams try to play small ball against the Friars, Nate Watson eats and has a day. And, dude, I just got to say, I did not expect the Arcidiacono brother to get that much time on the floor. He looks nothing like Ryan Arcidiacono, but it was kind of funny to watch. I think the biggest defensive stop of the game for us was when AJ Reeves blocked his shot and we forced the shot clock violation.
Oh, yeah.
It was almost kind of funny because in the old Villanova days, you would see the ball in an Arcidiacono's hands and you'd think, all right, well, great, they're going to win the possession. But it's like the difference is night and day. And that's not to disrespect the kid because he's young. He doesn't get a lot of playing time. But it was almost refreshing for anyone that's been torched by Ryan Arcidiacono. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Chris Arcidiacono, 0 for 4 from the field, no points. And all 4 attempts were 3-pointers. This is something I talked about in pregame show and in my article over at Big East Coast Bias. One of the keys for Villanova, I mean, it starts and ends at the 3-point line. When the Friars have beaten them in the past, they've shut them down there. And today really wasn't an exception to that. 4 of 18 from beyond the arc. That's how Nova shot. That's only 22%. That's nothing fantastic. And that was a big reason why Villanova only scored 52 points.
Yeah. I mean, the second half was very sloppy, but you got to credit the Friars defense, man. I mean, holding Villanova to 52. I mean, is this the same team that played St. John's on Wednesday? Are you sure? Because after that Wednesday performance, I could not have told you that we were going to hold Villanova to 52. Yeah. Absolutely not.
And this is the lowest. That's the lowest total on the season for the Wildcats. 59 was their previous low. Given
Gillespie's out and Moore got hurt, for anyone that tuned into our halftime show, I am not good with the visuals that they replayed of Gillespie's knee bending a weird way and Moore's ankle.
They showed Moore's injury again like 3 or 4 times in the second half.
Yeah, I'm not. Anyone who knows me personally knows that I get very queasy very easily. I'm not good with blood or weird injuries, so that was a lot of fun to watch for me personally. But yeah, I mean, given those 2 guys were injured and Villanova still made it one hell of a second half, that was as up and down of a game as you could have gotten. I mean, we were up 20 points in the first half. 20 on Villanova.
And you got to credit the defense. You also got to mention, we can't do this post-game show without mentioning that obviously, one, no Colin Gillespie, two, like we just said, no Justin Moore for most of the ball game, who was the next man up. So you're relying on Caleb Daniels, who ran the point at Tulane. He has experience there. Brian Antoine, who's a young kid. Archer Diacono, who does not play that much to fill that role. Villanova did not – they didn't know how to run this offense yet. They had 8 assists to 8 turnovers. Those aren't great numbers. And the Friars were bad on that too. 8 assists to 10 turnovers. Both defenses, I think, played very, very good games today. And with no Gillespie, no Moore, it was the Friars who were able to hit those clutch shots.
I mean, this is exactly what you expected. You expected a gritty defensive battle. I will admit I was a lot harder on the Friars in the pregame show than I normally am. I think that's a combination of it was the day after the St. John's loss. Realistically, I did not think that beating Villanova was possible after the performance we put out and after the season that we've kind of delivered. Mm-hmm. And given our record in conference play and where we stand overall with respect to postseason play, I just didn't think this game had a lot of meaning for us other than beating your in-conference rival. But here we are. We beat Villanova, and I think we picked up a ton of momentum going into next week. I'm not saying that we're going to win the Big East tournament, but this momentum certainly helps for a team that just bumped up from an 8 to a 7 seed. And for me personally, I took off Thursday and Friday next week. And when we were dropped down to the 8 seed, I was really upset because the 8-9 games at 3 on Wednesday. And I was like, well, I took off the wrong days, but now we're playing.
Now we
6,
got the
so
6 o'clock game.
Yeah.
No, and this is, I don't know how much momentum you can talk about with the Friars. They haven't won back-to-back games since mid-February, and they haven't won more than 2 in a row since last year, since the last calendar year, the end of 2020 with Fairleigh Dickinson, TCU, and Seton Hall. So we're going to see what happens. I think we got to mention the very, very end of that game with the inbounds pass from Villanova and the putback. You know what that reminded me of a little bit, Joe? The end of the Providence Xavier game.
Oh my God.
2018 in overtime when Xavier hit what would have been I don't remember if it was game winning or game tying 3, but
at the Big East tournament.
But they took
it would have been
game
tying.
Yeah, and they took it a second after the buzzer. You had Jeremiah Robinson Earl able to get open. Nate Watson messes up his defense there and goes for the steal, misses the ball. Robinson Earl gets the open 3, and the putback goes in, but thankfully a second too late.
So it's funny you bring that up because I got vibes from the Xavier game this year when they hit the 3 with a 10th of a second left. When Robinson Earl got that open look, I screamed some profanity because I thought he was going to hit it. Thankfully, he didn't. And then, of course, Samuels comes flying in and hits the putback. Lucky for us, the little shot clock counter on top of the hoop ran out before he went in. So everyone in the bar knew that it was no good. So we started cheering, but then they started replaying it. And everyone was like, wait, what? Like, for a split second, we all thought that the refs were going to give Villanova like point whatever seconds left on the clock. We were like, oh my God. But thankfully, time expired. But you're right, Matt. That now that I think about it, that is really, really, really similar to the Xavier game in the Big East tournament in 2018.
Yeah, and it's just, that was nerve-wracking to watch that. I thought for sure, I was with you. I thought for sure Robinson Earl was going to hit that, but you could tell from his shot it was a little bit off. I was hoping it wasn't going to be a bank in or something crazy like that. Thankfully, no points. Basket doesn't count. Friars hold on for the win. I think it's also worth noting, when the Friars beat Villanova last year, it was 58-54. This one's 54-52. It's the defense. And if the Friars defense plays like this game in, game out, they can play with anybody. It's just, it hasn't done that. And as bad as the second half was in a lot of ways, Friars got outscored by 15 points in the second half. They got outscored by 25 in the second half against St. John's. This is a pattern. But the defense was good enough to this afternoon that didn't matter. And I mean, that's just a testament to at least to the talent level of these guys. There's no doubt that these guys can execute.
No, you're right. The defense was good enough to secure this one. Had Villanova had a healthy Gillespie and a healthy Moore, I don't know if the defense is enough. I think that kind of goes under the radar. We've obviously touched on it, but I think it goes so underappreciated, the loss of those two and what it meant for us. Because if that same inbounds play with 2.8 left on the clock was to Gillespie, that shot goes in. Robinson Earl is not as good of a three-point shooter as Gillespie. So we should really appreciate, not appreciate that they're hurt, but appreciate that they weren't on the floor. You don't want anyone to get hurt, so you don't appreciate their injury, but you appreciate that we had the opportunity to play Villanova without two of their more important backcourt players.
Yeah. No, and that's, you got to do, you play the opponent that shows up. It kind of stinks for the Friars that you didn't get to play a healthier Villanova team if you're trying to boost your resume in any way, but this is the Villanova team that showed up and you won, and that's what matters. And this is something we actually forgot to mention on the last show, but we've been talking about this outside of the show. The Friars have got a really lucky stretch when it comes to opponents being injured.
Oh,
Obviously,
yes.
Yeah, no Gillespie today, and no Justin Moore getting injured partway through. No Posh Alexander in the last game against St. John's. No Nate Johnson in the Xavier game. They did get a fully healthy UConn, but then you go back a game, no Charlie Morford DePaul, and you go back to the previous UConn game before that, there was no Book Night and no Cook. That's of this last 6-game stretch, 5 of them your opponent has been shorthanded. So maybe that's the reason the Friars went 4-2 over the last month of the season. But you play the opponent that you get. And before that, the Friars were shorthanded for most of their opponents with no Jared Bynum. So, it's basketball. Depth is important. And obviously Villanova lost 2 good players, but they didn't have the horses behind them to back it up.
Yeah, there's one saying that I always like, and it's like you got to play the cards you're dealt. When you're dealt the card that your starting point guard is out, you got to stretch David Duke too thin, and look what happens. When he comes back, the cards you get are everyone else is going to miss a key player, and you got to capitalize where you can. Obviously, we missed some opportunities, but then we capitalize on some other opportunities. So I think that's a credit to the coaching and the game plan. From the starting 5, Ed Cooley knew that there was no Gillespie and that we had to take advantage defensively. And you saw it. We didn't start a true point guard. David Duke ran the point as the combo, and Greg Gant got the start at the 3. So Cooley knew he wanted to go bigger. He wanted to go more defensive. And in the final 3 minutes, you saw him playing chess with Jared Bynum and Greg Gant. And we've seen this before. The pink out Villanova upset from 2018. He played chess with Drew Edwards and Kyron Cartwright. Drew Edwards was in for defense, and Kyron Cartwright was in for offense. You're swapping out a guard for a forward here.
Yeah, and I thought for the most part, the rotations were very good for Ed Cooley today. In the first half, there was one point where it was almost all bench players on the floor. But that's going to happen
exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Other than that, I think the rotations were good. At a certain point, you got to look at the scoreboard and realize, all right, well, Reeves only had 2 points and Bynum only had 2 points, and they played 29 and 32 minutes. So when that happens, sometimes your best guys don't play the way that you expect them to. Gant, no points in 21 minutes played. But you got the performances. The 3 guys that were important, Duke, Watson, and Horkler, they had the performances, and as long as they were on the floor, which they were for the vast majority of the game, you were doing all right. You were hanging in there.
Yeah, to go back to our pregame show, Matt, you and I both said that to win this game, Horkler and Watson, the 2 seniors on – well, actually, we'll talk about this after, but the 2 seniors on what was supposed to be senior night, we're going to have to really bring it. And Horkler with a double-double, Watson with 20 points, they brought it. Duke, you can't ask for more out of him. But about Reeves and Bynum, I thought their contributions, while not powerful in the stat sheet, I thought they needed to be out there. Bynum is a calming presence in the backcourt because he can run the point and let Duke ease into the combo position. And Reeves is he's really transformed into a vocal upperclassman. And I think that goes under the radar, the way he can orchestrate the guys, the way he can, mentally check everyone in. I think his non-statistical impact goes under the radar, if that makes sense.
No, I absolutely agree. I mean, these are guys you can't. If you're winning games, again, at both ends of the floor. And even the guys who didn't get it done on the score sheet played good defense for the Friars. That's how you got to where you are. It was a team effort. It's not just, it's the three guys on offense who led the way, but it's everybody that saw the floor at the defensive end.
Yep. So I do want to circle back to another point I just brought up. First off, a shout out to my friend Casey Sullivan. He's a senior manager on the team. Tonight was his senior night. He's been a really great manager. He's very focused. He's very committed, and he's going to be traveling with the team to Madison Square Garden next week. So we wish him luck. We wish the team luck, and shout out to Casey Sullivan. He's been a great guy, a really essential manager for the past couple of seasons. But while the managers did have their senior night, the players did not. There was no senior night celebration. Sorry, I'm leaning on a washing machine right now. That's how I'm doing the podcast. There was no senior night celebration for Nate Watson or Noah Horkler today.
Or Andrew Fonz.
Well, the walk-on.
Yeah. No, but I mean, that's, I think, at least somewhat notable. We'll see what they do, but it's pretty clear. Both were asked about it post-game. Both said that they have not made a decision as to whether or not they'll be back next year. So
okay.
That's going to be probably the biggest question in Friartown over the coming weeks and months, especially once this season comes to a close. Obviously, there is still more to be played. The Friars will be, what do you call it? Friars will be either the 7th seed or the 6th seed, actually. Excuse me.
Depending on how things shake out.
Yes. So with a Marquette, and obviously I'm saying this, by the time you're listening to this, these results will probably have already happened. But Friars will play Marquette if Xavier wins, and they'll be the 6th seed and play DePaul if Marquette wins. And that's the Marquette-Xavier game tonight. So I think, I'm going to be honest, I think the 7th seed is probably the preferred path just because you would have to go through Creighton instead of UConn immediately, which is definitely the preferred matchup there. And I don't think Marquette is a particularly scary opponent at this point in time. Not more so than, I mean, neither of Marquette or DePaul is a particularly scary opponent for the Friars. Honestly, in some ways, there aren't a lot of scary opponents for the Friars in general. It's all about what Friars team shows up.
No, you're completely right, Matt. And obviously, we can go much more in depth once we get the matchup and when we know what path we have in the Big East tournament. But I think realistically, the only matchup that I don't really like is Connecticut because of James Bouknight and because of their size. But realistically, if we're going to play Creighton again, we basically have the blueprint to how to beat them. You give it to Nate Watson, and they have no one to block him. Mm-hmm. If you play Villanova, which hopefully we don't have to again because they brought one hell of a second half. I mean, that was...
Yeah, and they may have... we don't know the severity of Justin Moore's injury, so he could be back.
Right. But basically, you know how to beat every other team. There's 2 teams, actually, that I don't want to see again, and that's Connecticut and St. John's, because St. John's, their brand of basketball, the Friars, we cannot keep up with it. So if we see St. John's again in their alternate home arena of Madison Square Garden, forget it.
Yeah, I don't like that matchup.
Neither do I.
No. But I think we are getting ahead of ourselves a little bit because there's a lot to happen between now and the next Friars game. Let's bring it back to this one. We can do game balls. Who's getting your game ball?
Ooh. I'm going to go with one of those multiple game balls. I got to give it to Watson and Duke. I mean, Watson imposed his will in the paint. This is something that I said about the first matchup at Finneran. I said Watson needed to impose his will. He got into foul trouble early and really didn't have the opportunity to. Tonight, he really, really took advantage. I loved the matchups that he had. He was favorable in every single one of them. He did miss a couple of bunnies, but for the bunnies that he missed, he made them up with some emphatic dunks right on the head of Caleb Daniels. And David Duke, I mean, David Duke was like, you know what? I'm the best guard on the floor right now. and he knew it. So
Yeah.
he took advantage, and the two of them tipped the ball in for the game-winning shot. That was awesome. They credited Duke, but if you look at the replay, both of their hands are right there. I mean, what more could you ask for in the season finale against the Big East regular season champion? Is your two best players tip it in together? I mean, no more perfect ending than that.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to give a game ball to Noah Horchler as well. He was my X factor, and I don't think you see the Friars play as well as they did without him on the boards. 13 rebounds, tied for a game high. Robinson Earl also had 3 rebounds. But, I mean, he led the way there for the Friars in the paint. That was absolutely needed. And Friars won the paint battle 28-18. That's not something that we've seen a lot this season. Obviously, Nate Watson deserves a lot of that, but you're not doing that without Horchler either. So credit to him for that one. And I mean, this for Duke, Watson, and Horchler is a chance for all three of them. This was their last game on the campus of Providence. Well, no matter what, I think it was their last game on the campus of Providence College because they should be back at Dunkin' Donuts Center next season. But probably their last home game for the Friars. There's a chance for all three of them. So heck of a way to go out there. Friars will return to action next Wednesday.
TBD.
Opponent to be determined at this point. So we will have some pregame stuff for you about the Big East tournament. We'll be covering the whole way there. Obviously, there's a lot of optimism after the way the Friars ended this season. Not quite the stretch that a lot of people anticipated. Obviously, finishing either 6th or 7th in the conference is not what was expected after a third-place preseason poll finish in the coaches' poll. But we're here. This is the season, and we're just going to see where things go from here. Joe, I will give you the last word on this game.
I'd like to apologize for my raspy voice. I know it's probably going to be difficult to listen to, but in the heat of the moment, I had to scream and cheer for the Friars. But you know what to do going forward. You feed Nate, you let Duke do his thing, and you let the role players settle into place. That's a Villanova team I don't want to see again. But hey, go Friars, baby.
Go Friars. Make sure that you're following us on Twitter at The Flex Hoops to stay up to date with all of our content. Follow us wherever you're listening to this. And as always, thank you for listening.
For one last time in the regular season, go Friars.